Hello and welcome to this week's midweek mini lesson. We are in Galatians 2 today. We're going to be doing verses 1 through 10. Just so you're aware, I am out of my brand new Bible today, so this isn't the NIV version anymore. This is the 2020 New American Standard. So if you noticed the difference between the last time and this time, that's why. All right, so here we go. Starting in verse 1 of chapter 2, it says, "Then after an interval of 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along also. It was because of a revelation that I went up, and I submitted to them the gospel which I preach among the Gentiles. But I did so in private to those who were of reputation, for fear of somehow I might be running or had run in vain. But not even Titus, who was with me, though he was Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. Yet it was a concern because of the false brothers secretly brought in, who had sneaked in to spy on our freedom, which we have in Christ Jesus, in order to enslave us. But we did not yield in subjection to them, even for an hour, so that the truth of the gospel would remain with you. But from those who were of considerable repute, what they were makes no difference to me. God shows no favoritism. While those who were of repute contributed nothing to me. But on the contrary, seeing that I had been entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter had been to the circumcised, for he who was at work for Peter in his apostleship to the circumcised was at work for me also to the Gentiles. And recognizing the grace that had been given to me, James and Cephas and John, who were reputed to be pillars, gave to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, so that we might go to the Gentiles and they to the circumcised. They also asked us to remember the poor, the very thing that I was eager to do." All right, so that's the entirety of this section. I just want to kind of give you some highlights as far as what's actually going on here. But basically, Paul's saying, look, we have this issue going on where there's people coming in that are saying, okay, you can follow Christ, but you still have to follow the law. You still have to be circumcised. You still have to be whatever. So they said, okay, Gentiles, fine, we'll admit them in, but they still have to follow what the Jews always had to do and be circumcised and follow the law. And Paul said, no, they don't. He said, not even, let me switch back here, make sure I got the name right. I think it was Titus. Yeah, not even Titus, who was with me, even felt compelled to do that. Like, he didn't feel like God was saying, hey, you have to do this. So he said, I don't think that has anything to do with it. And he goes on and basically says, look, I talked to James and Cephas and John. Cephas is Peter. So to James and Peter and to John, and they said, yeah, keep going to evangelize to the Gentile, to the uncircumcised, and James and Peter and John will continue to preach to the Jew. And he's basically saying, look, this is kind of how that God has orchestrated this. That Barnabas and Paul are going to the Gentile, that John and James and Peter are going to the Jew. It's to reach both sections here. And that's the whole idea. The only thing that happened here is in verse 10. He says, they only asked for us to remember the poor, which was the very thing that I was already eager to do. So it's really interesting that he said, yeah, go for the Gentiles, but don't forget the poor. Make sure you get the poor too. And Paul says, of course, yeah, I'm already excited about doing that. So this is kind of like where you start to see how the church grows just beyond Judaism and spreads out to the whole world because of Paul's reaching out to the Gentiles. So I hope you enjoyed this week's midweek mini lesson, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.